Hello, good morning to all of you joining us today. My name is Francisco Melo. I'm National Contact Point for the European Innovation Council at Luxinnovation, the National Innovation Agency in Luxembourg, and I'll be your host on today's webinar on the topic Unbox Your Innovation, Scale it up through the EIC, where we'll be focusing mainly on the EIC Accelerator. The main objective of this webinar is to raise awareness of the EIC Accelerator Program, specifically among our startup and SME ecosystem in Luxembourg, and to trigger the creation of critical mass around it. But of course, make no mistake, if you're coming from any other European or world geography, you're more than welcome to join us. And for this very reason, our agenda is mainly twofold. So first of all, guiding you through the basics of the program and of the application process, and also to get EIC's experts understanding on the critical success factors for a winning proposal. But first things first, let me let you know how this platform that we'll be using works. So you can find on the bottom right corner of your screen the chat. The chat you can use mainly to introduce yourselves, to tell us where you're coming from. And I also have the question box that you can use to put questions to our audience. Let me say on this that we'll today accept only questions put in written, okay? And these will be posed on the end of our session to our panel and to our group of speakers. Please note that also on the question box, you can vote in a question in case you have a similar one, okay? It might be the case that we might not be able to answer to all of the questions, but please make sure that these will be answered and will be used as a basis for a webinar together with winners of the EIC Accelerator that we are planning to organize after the summer break. So all in all, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the housekeeping rules. I would like to say that for now, we have over 60 people already participating, and numbers are going up, so very, very happy for this. So going to the agenda, after this first introduction of mine, we will have Stephanie, my dear colleague Stephanie from the startup team, talking a bit the funding is scaling up, how this goes hand in hand together. Then I will be giving you an overview of the basics and application process of the EIC Accelerator. We will be going to a discussion with our experts, EIC jury, evaluator, and coach on the critical success factors of a winning accelerated proposal, and then to the Q&A based a bit on the questions that you put on the box. So at very first, I would like to invite now my dear colleague Stephanie Silvestre to come on stage. She is a senior advisor for the Startup Accelerator team, and she will be doing almost a keynote speech. Stephanie, please go ahead and tell us what you're coming for.
Thank you so much, Francisco, for this warm introduction. Thank you also for having me today. So my name is Stephanie Silvestre. I'm Senior Advisor in the Startup Acceleration Department at Luxinnovation, and I do have the pleasure to give you today a quick overview on the different support schemes that exist along the innovation journey of a startup, and which also help you really in the context of scaling up your business. To start with, I would like to give you first an overview on how we as a Startup Acceleration Department can support you, knowing that we are supporting tech and data-driven startups regardless of their industry, which are either already established here in Luxembourg or that do seek to establish their business here in the Grand Duchy. Based on your needs and your industry focus, we facilitate really the connection to the other actors in the ecosystem. This we do under the umbrella of Startup Luxembourg. That's where the different actors all come together, and where these different actors are really providing access to key value-adding activities here in the Grand Duchy. We can really say that business opportunity creation is clearly at the heart of this initiative. Of course, we also make the connection with the other departments of Luxinnovation if you have not already been in contact with them. For example, if it's regarding funding, then we put in contact with the colleagues from the European Funding Department. If it's for national funding, it's the corporate RDI team. But we also make sure to put you in contact with our key sector experts, which are really seeking to create synergy opportunities in their specific field. Our team also offers coaching and guidance when it comes to business modeling, business plans, and pitch decks. This we do, for example, also in the context when you're applying for state aid applications, where a business plan and the cash flow are really key documents when you're a startup. And there we offer you the possibility to get a review from us and to get our feedback until you officially submit your application. Last but not least, we also organize twice a year an acceleration program, which is called Fit for Start, and which has been initiated and is also financed by the Ministry of the Economy. Talking about funding, let's have a look at the whole life cycle and which type of funding exists on the private as well as on the public side, and also at the different maturity stages. When we look at the private funding side, typically at the early stages, founders start with money from family and friends, so the so-called FFF, or even their own savings, so the typical bootstrapping. After some fine-tuning of your product and your business model, when you really get to your first minimum viable product, so your MVP, that's when you can start, depending also on the industry where you're in, raising money from your first institutional investors, such as seed investors or business angels. It might even be that this is the time where an acceleration program could be of interest to you in order to really accelerate this stage and get a lot of insights and input from key experts in the market. After this, once you are really at the growth stage, that's when you typically start talking to the venture capitalists, even late stage VCs. On the public funding side, there are different instruments that exist on the national as well as on the EU level. At national level, we have the so-called research, development and innovation schemes that are available to SMEs. These are pure subsidies granted by the Ministry of the Economy here in Luxembourg, and which aim to encourage companies to carry out R&D activities here in the Grand Duchy. There's also a startup-specific scheme, which is called Young Innovative Enterprise. This instrument really aims to support startups in their scaling phase, and this instrument is capped at 800,000 euros per company. Important to know is that each project is assessed individually. You can request, it's always based on a co-finance capacity from the company. So you also need to have your own funding to co-finance the part of the projects that are not eligible for any type of funding. And they follow a bottom-up approach, meaning that if the project fulfills all the eligibility criteria, you can benefit from financial aid at national level. Going now level up with European funding, so European level, and that's where the European Innovation Council is really seeking to support high-risk innovations. I'm not the expert here. I'm pretty sure Francisco will guide you a bit deeper in those programs. But what I want to do is really to show you how they can position themselves on this funding landscape, on this funding map. I will not mention the Pathfinder or the transition because that's not the focus of today's presentation, but more on the EIC Accelerator Program, because this is also the only one out of the 3 that is targeting single SMEs. The aim here is really to support companies with high impact innovative products, services, or business models that can create new markets or disrupt existing ones, and either on European level or even worldwide. If you are a startup that has an ambitious and a scale-up plan and is committed to it, who is also looking for substantial funding, but the risks involved are potentially too high for private investors, then the EIC might be, for example, of interest to you. Regardless of we go for private, for public funding, and regardless of at which stage you are, there are some key factors that you need to take into account when you are looking for funding. The first one is you need to anticipate your funding, your next funding round, as soon as possible. Don't start to look for funding when it's already too late. You need to know that getting to a first signed term sheet from a private investor or applying for a grant takes time and also needs a lot of preparation. The second thing is that you need to have a clear IP measure structure in place. You really need to make sure that you have a full freedom to operate on the technology. Another point is that you need to have a convincing commercialization strategy. It's not just about the product. You also need to understand and to know how you're going to make money out of it. So what will be the economic impact? You need to have a clear view in mind on what your market is. And you need to have a plan on how accessing this market efficiently. This goes hand in hand with also having an ambitious but still realistic scale-up plan. It's important for you to understand it, to know what you need in order to implement your strategy, in order to implement your scale-up plan. Having an understanding about what is the financial means that you need, but also what are other type of resources, such as human capital, that you need in order to really implement your plan. I just mentioned it, capital, human capital, human resources, and that brings me also to the last key factor that you need to count, but for me, the most important one, which is it's all about the team. That's also what investors are always saying. It's the core team, the founding team needs to be a convincing and also committed team, but you also need to have the right people behind you in order to scale up your company. Now, let's have a look at how such an innovation journey use case could look like. Knowing that here at Luxinnovation, we are there really to help identifying the most suitable aid scheme for you. And we really try from day one on to define together with you a funding roadmap. Maybe not everything is accessible today for you from day one, but that's not the point. It's really about thinking about the future, thinking already a step ahead and what could come next. This we do, of course, based on your own roadmap and based on your needs. And therefore, it's also important for you to think big, but still realistic from day one on. So you need to have a clear view in mind on what's in your pipeline for the future. Important to note also is that under no circumstances the same costs can be financed twice, which does, however, not mean that there cannot be a slight overlap in terms of timing between two different projects. For instance, for example, you could go for a national funding scheme while applying for an EIC program. The importance here is really that there is a clear split between costs and resources per project. So you also need to make sure that you have enough resources to do both projects. So now let's have a look at an example of such a use case. Taking the hypothesis that you are maybe at more at the early stages, you have just developed your MVP, so your minimum viable product, and you still need support and coaching in defining your product market fit and your business model. That's maybe when an acceleration program such as the Fit for Start could be of interest to you, or really to scale this phase to accelerate quickly. And after this, you probably will enter in a stage where you will focus a lot on product development with a high invest in technology. And this is typically something that could be, for example, supported by an R&D grant at national level. Once you enter the growth phase, that's, for example, where a young innovative enterprise or an EIC Accelerator program could be of interest to really support your total financial need. But again, this depends on really on which industry you are in and what your needs are. I know that this might look a bit like a jungle, but that's why we here at Luxinnovation are there for you. We really try to support you in this journey. From day one. And when it comes to funding, it's really all about defining together your roadmap, your project, assessing your funding needs, and checking also if you are really meeting all the admission or eligibility criteria. So we are your helping hand when it comes to guiding you to the different funding support measures that exist. Of course, we also review your documents. So we typically do a review of your documents to make sure that they are in the right form and in good shape before your final and official submission. I hope that this gave you an overview on what exists and that you are already now thinking ahead of your next step. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if there's anything you want to discuss on a bilateral basis. Happy to do so. And with no further ado, I would like to hand over again to my colleague, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. That's what I call a clean and sharp presentation. Of course, if you have questions specifically about state aid to startups, don't hesitate to use the question box to ask questions to Stephanie. Ask a lot of them because she will be happy to get back to you. She will also join, if needed, the Q&A session in the end. Getting back to my presentation, you can really see that I was the one doing the agenda, as my name is in the 3 out of 6 slots this morning. Wow. So to my presentation, my intention is not to go into details about the EIC Accelerator, but rather to just provide you a general overview about the accelerator itself and the application process. Of course, I will be more than happy to address these details in bilaterals with you as a follow-up to our meeting, okay? So, first thing, I want to really differentiate what is the EIC program as a whole and the EIC Accelerator. To the program, the European Innovation Council is the Europe's flagship innovation program to identify, develop, and scale up breakthrough technologies and game-changing innovations. If you look at what is the Horizon Europe structure, just to give you a bit of rationale of the European Innovation Council, and not going into details. So you can see that the European Innovation Council is the third pillar in Innovative Europe. So the rationale was very much, okay, in Europe, we have a solid research and industrial base, which is the home of also creative entrepreneurs, but we have still room for improvement in what is the use of the scientific excellence and industrial power to really accelerate innovation and turn SMEs into global technology giants. Borrowing the diagram that my colleague Stephanie used, I want to give you a bit of an overview of the EIC program, the accelerator is not the only funding instrument that we have on the EIC program. We will indeed focus on the EIC Accelerator today, but we have the Pathfinder, which is for low TRL, basically from early technology to proof of concept. We have the transition that it's basically from proof of concept to pre-commercial activities. And we have the EIC Accelerator that goes basically to from pre-commercial activities to market scale-up. Of course, all of these have slightly different target groups, but for the accelerator, we'll be speaking about grants and investment for SMEs and startups, single application type of program. So what is the EIC Accelerator looking for? Basically, startups and SMEs seeking to scale up high impact innovation with the potential to disrupt the market. Innovations building on scientific discovery of technology breakthroughs, the so-called deep tech, and innovations where significant funding is needed over a long time frame, and that are also too risky for private investors alone. Very quickly, within the accelerator, you have basically three types of funding. You can choose one of them, the one that suits you best. The blended finance, which is the one on your left-hand side, is the most popular one, since it provides an EIC grant of up to 2.5 million, covering 70% of your eligible costs, and due to innovation activities from TRLs 5 to 8, together with an investment that can go up to 15 million to cover remaining expenditures and mainly market scale-up activities. You also have the grant first and grant only. So the two of these are for innovation activity to the latest stage of innovation, of development of your product, okay? So on the one hand, the grant only you can only access the 2.5 million in case you show that you have the capacity to, and your own funds or other types of funds, including private funding, to scale up your product later. The grant first, you will assess at the later stage of your process whether you are at a point where you can, on one hand, either ask for the investment part of the EIC or go for the investment yourself together with private investors or other source of funding. The winner journey, basically 3-4 steps. Step 1, the success rate is up to 70%. Step 2, the success rate is up to 20%. Face-to-face interview success rate is up to 50%, and then we have the due diligence. In the end of the process, as you will see in the final slide, we have between 1 and 5% of the startups that apply are successful. That apply on step 1, of course. Step 1, you need to tell your story. You have a short application that is equivalent to 5 pages, a basic diagnosis, that you have to submit in the EIC AI platform together with a 10-slide pitch deck and a 3-minute video, okay? You have 4 remote evaluators, and to proceed to step 2, you need at least 2 evaluators to give a go to your project. We have no deadlines for step 1. It is continuously open, so you can submit anytime a step 1 proposal to the EIC Accelerator. Step 2, it's where the main workload comes, okay? Once that you're through to step 1, step 2, you have a full application also in the AI platform, which will be equivalent to more than 100 pages, okay? You have a pitch deck to submit that has no slide limit, and you have to also submit extra mandatory documents such as the financial annex, the data management plan, and the freedom to operate analysis. On this step, you have 3 evaluators, and they all need to give a go in all the criteria. The criteria that is used for the EIC Accelerator is very much the 3 criteria that are common to Horizon Europe: excellence, impact, and implementation. Okay. On step 2, we do have deadlines. The last one for 2022 is the 5th of October, but we are already working on the work program for 2023, and soon we will have the dates released for the next year. Face-to-face interview. You basically invited, once you through step 2, invited to pitch your innovation either online or in Brussels to an EIC jury that is composed of from 4 to 6 juries. Okay, you have 10 minutes to present, to do your presentation based on the pitch deck that you submitted on step 2, and there will be roughly 35 minutes of Q&A from the jury. So the panel of juries will have a consensus decision on your project is a go or a no-go. Go meaning that your project is recommended for funding, and no-go meaning that your project is not recommended for funding, but still can get a seal of excellence that will facilitate you to have access to other sources of funding. Please also note that in all step 1, step 2, and face-to-face interview, you can resubmit your proposal. Is one of the details that I am skipping on purpose to avoid this presentation to be very much heavy. Due diligence. Once you're recommended for funding, you start a due diligence and a compliance check with specifically in case you select the investment component, and you will then be invited to sign the investor agreement. Okay. The whole process from step 1 to the end of the diligence might take up to 1 year. And as I said, from those that apply on step 1, we usually have between 1% and 5% of winners. Now I would like to initiate the experts panels. Of course, if you have questions regarding my presentation, the EIC Accelerator, please do not hesitate to put them in the question box. We will address them to the extent possible in the Q&A session after the experts panel. Now for the experts panel, I would like to ask on stage Larissa Best, which is an EIC jury, Katia Septimus, that is an EIC evaluator, and Kaya Posti, that is an EIC coach. Okay, if I may please have them on board, I would appreciate that. In the meanwhile, while we wait for them to join, I would perhaps say that one of the aspects that I skipped on purpose was that, for example, when you go from step 1 to step 2, you have access to the business acceleration services from the Commission. And one of these services is the coaching. If you are one of the startups going from step 1 to step 2, you might well be invited to select Kaya to be one of your coaches. So Kaya will be the one helping you. You have access to 3 days of free coaching services offered by the Commission. So Kaya could well be one of these. So to evaluate your step 1 and step 2, you have EIC evaluators. And one of these could easily be Katia. I know that Katia currently is only evaluating step 2 proposals, but she already also did step 1. So she has all the expertise to inform us about that as well. And finally, if you're invited out of step to a face-to-face interview, you have a panel of EIC juries. One of these juries could well be Larissa Best. So these are our experts, all of them with different perspectives to share. I would like once again, if possible, to invite them to join me on the stage. So please, guys, just come on board.
Hi.
Okay, here you are. So I have Kaya and Katya. Larissa is also maybe joining us in the meanwhile. In the meanwhile, let me also perhaps start with Kaya, since let me put like this in a sort of value chain. So people that goes through step 1 to step 2, they have access to coaching. You could well be one of these coaches. So Kaya, tell us a bit about your professional experience. Then I pass to Katya and then to Larissa if she joins as well in the meanwhile. Tell us a bit about you, because I only said that you were an EIC coach. I can imagine that you're much more than that. Tell us a bit about your personal experience, about since when you're an EIC jury. How many companies have you already coached within the EIC roughly? So please come on stage and let us know.
Thank you so much, Francesco. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Hello to everybody. Like I said, yeah, I'm Kaya. I'm from Finland, so sitting in the Finnish archipelago at the moment, which is why you see the log cabin behind me. Pleasure to be here. My experience, so first of all, talking about the EIC experience. So I've been a coach since the coaching program started 2015, I think. So throughout the Horizon 2020 and now in Horizon Europe. I've been coaching tens of companies already in Horizon Europe. And then, of course, Horizon 2020, I've also been coaching companies who have received funding and are eligible for additional coaching. I'm also a pitching coach, so that for companies who get selected to so-called corporate days and corporate events, they get pitching coaching in addition, which is shorter coaching. And I've been coaching probably 200 companies there. So, long experience from coaching tier 1 companies and then also the funded companies. Other experience, so I have a master's of science in physics and applied mathematics, so I'm data scientist and AI. But my main relevant experience is that I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a business angel, so I'm the one funding companies at very early stage. I'm also a limited partner in 2 VCs, which are mostly growth VCs here in Finland, and I've been also on the board of directors of large VCs, so like Finnish industry investment, where we were doing much larger investments. So I've been doing both fundraising for the companies that I've invested in, and I've been sitting on the other side of the table, getting applications for funding. So what I have definitely learned is that, yes, a lot of the things that Stephanie said, all the things Stephanie said are really valid. And I'll come back to this, but from my experience, it is really important that, yes, you have to have a great idea, of course, but then to be funding ready, you have to focus on the commercial side, on the team, and really showing that you also have what it takes to make the great idea into a great commercial success. And that's what we coaches want to do, to help you in the business. And I already want to emphasize this now, that even though we are EIC coaches, so we focus on your business and developing that and helping you, not just to focus on the EIC application, which is important, but really to focus on your business story and the scalability and so on, so that you can also talk to private investors, because as Stephanie said, you really, really need to think about getting the private investment already from the beginning, not just the EIC funding.
Great, Kaya. Thank you very much. Katja, how about you? Tell us a bit about you and your experience as evaluator, your professional experience, all that.
Hello, good morning. You hear me, right? Yes, you hear me, right? So first of all, thanks for inviting me. My name is Katja Septimus. I'm in Vienna, Austria. Yeah, what can I tell you? I've been doing this since about the beginning, I think, of 2017. I've been a remote evaluator for step 1 and step 2 throughout the years. Until recently, the evaluators did step 1 and step 2 whenever they came, so to say, online. Most recently, I think half a year ago or so, it was changed in a way that the Commission either contracted us for either step 1 or step 2. So I was chosen for step 2. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm in my normal day job. I work for a big Austrian utility electricity company. I'm a project developer in renewables. And on the side, I'm consulting startups regarding strategy and business planning. Why am I doing this? Also because before my job for the utility, I was working for an investment firm that invested heavily in green topics and the focus on energy. I worked in the startup ecosystem in Israel. And I also worked in the government of Austria on environment and energy before that. For my education, I'm originally a lawyer by training. Never really worked as a lawyer, but that's what I studied. And I did quite a bit of engineering coursework, but I don't have an engineering degree. Yeah, I studied in Vienna, in Holland, and in the US. And yeah, what I wanted to add, just to make this clear, that whatever I say, this is just my personal experience. So we do this evaluation, of course, according to certain guidelines, but everything I can say is only my own experience and does not, reflect on the Commission or my employer or whoever. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, and I think that this last message from yours goes also to Kaya and to Larissa, which has not joined yet. As you can see, dear audience, I'm together now with my colleague Ina, which is also an advisor for Luxinnovation, and we work very closely on the EIC program. So Ina, I think you have some questions to our experts. So please go ahead. It's worth saying that these discussion points that we have are very much based on the experience that we have been having with the companies, the startups that we have been in contact with. So as also our experts know, there's a fundamental difference between the form through which startups and SMEs apply and the information that the form in which the information gets to the evaluators and also at some points to the coach. So we want to somehow discuss also this. So Ina, please, you have some questions for our panel. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Francisca. As Francisca said, we are like a generator of all startups questions. So we have plenty of them. And yeah, first of all, like when we are helping as NCP startup to apply for a EIC, especially on the stage 2, like we inspire them to find the best coach. But at the same time, we never participated in searching process. So I'm eager to know, Kaya, your experience, like how you match with a company, how it look like, how they approach you, how it's better to approach you, you know, like I would like to work with you, what questions or what background you would like to know in order to know also if you would like to connect with startup.
Sure, thank you. So first of all, in the EIC process currently, in the EIC Horizon, or Horizon Europe, sorry. So the coach matching happens via a portal, so that all the coaches, EIC coaches, their information is in a database, and then there are keywords, and then the companies can look for coaches based on searches they do, and then they get a list of potential coaches who match the keywords. But then what is absolutely necessary is to have a call with the coach or several coaches to see whether there is a match. And as you said, the match has to be two ways. So it's not only, okay, the company chooses the coach also wants to talk to the company to see whether there is a match. So, and by the way, as exactly as Katja said, these are my personal opinions. And I can also say that every coach is different. So there isn't like one way of coaching. I think in evaluation, there are more guidelines, but for coaching, it really is, we coaches have typically business backgrounds, some science backgrounds also, and so on. But we have been typically working with a lot of startups and growth companies. But we have our different experiences, our different expertises, and our different style of coaching. For me, as I said, it's really important to have that call with the company to see, okay, what are the key points that they are looking for? And at the same time, I ask questions from them to see, is my expertise and experience something that is valuable? And there are times, when I say to the company, listen, you're very interesting, but I think I'm not the best coach for you, because I think that you need expertise in areas where I feel I can't provide it. And I think this is very, very important, because, if the coach is successful, there needs to be a match. And this is why I really encourage all of you who think of, okay, I'll just select quickly the coach without talking to them. Please take the time to have the calls with the coaches. I know the coaching is nowadays optional. It used to be obligatory, but I do think that because this is a service that EU provides for all you startups, it's worth definitely, through the coaches and see whether you can find a match, because there are really experienced people there who can help in the process.
Thank you, Gaia. And how it looks like? So, startup allowed to have up to 3 days of coach with you. Yeah. How you split it? Like, I don't know, 3 hours per day in the evening, morning, how online writing?
Yeah. Okay. So again, my style is that I'm very flexible depending on what works best. But mostly what I see most efficient is, and how I think it makes sense. So instead of doing the 24 hours, split in 1 hour sessions or 2 hour sessions, I do want to do some preparatory work and some work, that we are doing, maybe exchanging emails and so on. And then we prepare the sessions when we are sitting together. Typically, I do like 1.5, 2 hour sessions, but then for that session, we have an agenda. Also, coaches are different. And again, I'm not saying that there's one right way of doing it, but I'm a pretty hands-on coach also when it comes to the EIC application. So I do want to kind of see point out the important things, because all the parts are important, but it's really important to be clear, concise. When you are doing the application, you have fields of 1,000 characters to write in the text. That doesn't mean that you have to fill in the 1,000 characters. It's better to be, I know Katja will agree, because honestly, if you fill in every field, your business plan, which is generated by the system, will end up being more than 200 pages. And that is a lot. And also there are parts which get repeated. So they are kind of repeated twice and so on, which the system generates it like that. So it's really important to be clear, concise, and really focus on the main differentiating factors. But then going back to, so how I do the coaching. So typically we schedule sessions, and then in between we are working, so that we're working offline but together. And then there are different ways. So as I said, I'm not a consultant, I'm a coach, so I want to find ways that match the needs of the company and the way they work. One thing I would like to say to all companies, so please don't say, okay, 1 week before the submission deadline, you get in touch with a coach. There may be coaches who will take you on. I won't, because there is just absolutely no way. It makes no sense to do 3 days of coaching, like, 3 full days, because it's not enough for the coach to really understand, get enough to what you are doing. So you get a coach early on. If there is time, you can divide it sort of over weeks, because then you get most of it.
Great. Thank you, Kaya, for providing your feedback on this. So, Katja, over to you now. I believe that you now are more in charge of step 2s, if I'm not mistaken, but you also have some experience on step 1. Can you guys tell us a bit on how these projects for evaluation are assigned to you? What is
you mean the okay.
How the commission assigned them to you? How many? Is this based on your personal experience on thematic areas? Can you tell us a bit about that?
I can comment on the current process. Okay, before I don't think it's really interesting, like the very current one. As I said, you get chosen either for step 1 or step 2 for a year. Okay, so we basically have access to the same interface, how you call this, Agora, like the same desktop, I don't know how to call it, like the applicants have. Just we sign in, and then we see proposals that match our keywords. So we have to give them keywords. Like for me, for example, it's renewable energy mainly. So we chose the keywords, the applicants choose keywords for their applications, and if this matches, this is on these proposals I see on the screen. When it comes to the step 1, they come online as the company submitted. So you have to see whenever something comes online, it's first come, first serve. So whoever presses first on the proposals gets it. For step 2, what I am contracted for, it depends on the deadlines, and about a day after the deadline, the proposals come online. We can pick, like each evaluator can pick up to 2 proposals at a time, and as soon as you finish one, you can pick the next one. For me, like this also, how should I say, like it favors, of course, people who are a bit faster, who have more like time during the day to evaluate, because they get more proposals. People with jobs and who take longer time, like me, it's a bit harder to get more proposals because I just need more time. For step 2 proposals, we have up to 7 days to evaluate. And for step 1, it used to be 4 days. I don't know what it is now, but it used to be 4 days.
Great. So how do you organize your evaluation process? So what do you check first? How much time do you devote to reading the elements? How do you interact with other? Do you interact with other evaluators?
So first of all, that's important. We are not able and we are not allowed to interact with other evaluators. So we have basically no idea what the others are doing, even who the others are. The only thing we see is if it's a resubmission, we see the old evaluations from the previous submission. Yeah, and we also see the step 1 evaluators, like whatever they say, plus the rebuttal of the company if they chose to do one. So as Kaya already said, the proposals get more and more complex. On the one hand, it's good, I get more information than it used to be on the 30 pages. On the other hand, just as Kaya said, I get sometimes up to 200 pages. Yeah, and you get lost. Like, it's really hard to read through 200 pages with partially repeating infos and really understand what's going on. especially also in my case with energy, often, I would need drawings or some kind of picture what the applicant is proposing. So unless the applicant puts it into the annex, which I really like, there's a possibility of a 10-page annex. So I'm really happy if this is kind of, so I can see what the company has in mind. It's very hard. So for me, it's really crucial. How do I understand this proposal? How do I understand the innovation? And how do I understand what's going on? Because my major question, how I evaluate, is I ask myself, if I were the investor, would I invest in this? Would I want to, in step one, would I want to learn more? And in step two, it's more stronger. It's like, would I invest in it? Because this is also the role I have from the EIC. Like, if I say yes, this proposal goes on to the jury. And we also have to kind of sort out, like, I cannot always say yes. Saying yes in a way is much easier. I don't have to reason so much because I know there's a lot of work going in. If I feel this is not a good proposal and I say no, since all the evaluators have to say yes, if I say no, this is it. So for me, saying no is like a lot of much more work than saying yes, because I reason a lot. Like, I don't want to just push them out. I want to tell them exactly why. And I want to be sure that this is not going forward. So would I invest? How do I proceed? So I can choose just from the procedure if I transform the whole application into a PDF and print it out, the 150 pages, or if I watch it just like the applicant sees it on the format. So that's my approach. I read the abstract first, of course, because that's if I choose the proposal or not, if it matches my expertise. Then I read the pitch deck and I do some outside research briefly about competitors, state of the art, innovation, like just on, Google and certain, magazines, whatever. Then, and that's maybe important, I check the company, but also outside of the proposal. So I check the website. I check Wayback Machine, when was the website created. I check LinkedIn, like all this kind of stuff. Not saying that, if one thing doesn't, LinkedIn kind of nobody of the cited employees cites the company, it's a bit weird. If there's a small, like, incoherence, doesn't matter. But, you get a bit of a picture, you check Google Maps. If the company says it has a workshop or a factory, then, maybe there's some kind of course, Google Maps could be old, but if it's in the center of, I don't know, Madrid, I don't know if they would do in an old building. I don't know if they can build a factory there. Like, these are kind of things I check. What I also look at is the LOIs, the supporting material. As I've said, strategic partners for scaling up is really important most of the time. So I check for LOIs. If they say like, we have so amazing partners, and I don't know, I'm just saying something like Volvo and BMW, or I don't know, Mercedes is working for us. I'm just saying something, or whichever big company, huge company is working with us, then okay, then show me the LOI that this company says, hey, I'm interested in a demonstration project or whatever. And only then I go to the long proposal, I must say, and I read through it. And honestly, I really read through it. And I take notes all along the way, because I know already the evaluation questions in my back of my mind. So I take notes. If there's a resubmission, or also for stage one, the old evaluations, I only check at this point, because I find for myself that I want to have my view first and then only read what others had to say for it. Then I go over it again, and along reading over it again, I draft the report and also the commentary. I don't know if the companies really see that, but I give extensive commentary in the proposal. Like, I don't always write everything in the report, but also along the side, I can always push on commentary and I write into that. Yeah, and then I review and check and look for my spelling mistakes. And yeah, then I submit it. How long do I take it? About 2 days. Seriously, I need 2 days for this. Like, I usually, of course, I do it overnight, but also if you do it overnight, I feel like sometimes it settles, you understand a bit more, you get a feel for it. I usually take vacations for this. Like vacations, like from my work, because I can't work and do this, it's too much. I also have a family, so that's also enough. Yeah, and basically that's it. So about 2 days I take. For no's, I take much longer than for go's. Yeah, yeah, my percentage is about, it was good what you said before, because you said on stage 2 about 20% are yes. That's about what I have. I did not know about that because we don't get any the EIC doesn't give us any guidelines, how many yes, how many no's or something. But I would say mine is about 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 gets a yes. About.
Katja, thank you so much. Now we have a more clear vision how it's going on behind the stage after you push the button to submit the proposal, and what is going on with all these documentations which startup preparing. I don't know, stage 2, it's like minimum 1 month if you are a very good team. Yeah, and now
minimum.
Yeah. And so now we're like having the real journey. We started with Kaya, coach who helped you to create the submission. After we were talking with Katja, how Katja evaluates you on a stage 2, and like up to like 10% who will be very lucky. I hope someone who are participating today will be pleasure to meet Larissa in face-to-face interview. But Larissa, we're happy to see you in our webinar. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. So my name is Larissa Best. I've been at the EIC doing evaluations as a jury member since 2018. And it's a pleasure to be here today. So my specializations, so as you probably all know, there's quite a few different juries and different specializations, and mine is usually more on the GovTech, everything that has to do with SaaS, education. So we usually get, we go into the different juries depending on what kind of specialization we have.
Nice. And could you please describe the process, how it's like when you go online? Now we know that mostly face-to-face meeting goes online, yeah? And how it looks like, yeah, after 10 minutes speech, what's going on after, like Q&A session?
Yes, correct. So when we're beforehand, obviously everything was face-to-face. Now everything is online, which is actually maybe even better for the applicants because they don't have to travel to Brussels. There's a whole logistics in Brussels itself, which is always a bit complicated for some of them. So what happens after the presentation is we usually already have, so we have 5 jury members, and we usually have already discussed at the beginning, so on Monday mornings, how we want to allocate the time when it comes to questions. We always start, I'm guessing some of you know that we have a briefer. So the briefer is a person, everybody reads all the documentation, but the briefer briefs the other jury members for about 10 minutes before everything starts. And that person always starts with the questions, but usually starts with a question. Every jury can make their own rules as to how they want to do it. But for us, so for all the juries who've been in, that's usually how we start. It's about 10 minutes where the briefer does the briefing. Then if there's any questions to the briefer, we ask the briefer. Then the presentation starts from the applicants. And after that, the briefer starts with a question, and then we move on in alphabetical order. We have the amount of time is usually divided by the different people, and we have the EIC who helps us through the process of making sure that, even if we have a lot of questions, that we still leave questions for the other jury members. So everybody has about, 5 minutes. If you don't have any questions anymore, we usually pass it on to the next jury member. And at the end, if there's any time left, then anybody, we just raise our hand, and then the moderator from the EIC gives us the word to ask any questions.
Do you have like the most common questions which you have like almost in each Q&A session?
We usually have quite a few questions about shareholders, because we want to make sure that the money is where the money goes and who gets the money in essence. There's usually always questions around that, and then we're also about sales channels. We have, if there's not anything around customer acquisition costs, we usually ask about that, and we want to make sure that everything they put in there, because they usually have those numbers in there, is realistic. Like, how did they get there? How did they find this out? Who in the team knows exactly what they're doing? Like, how can you be so confident? And then also we usually pick around the competition. Like most of the competitive analysis, I would say, really not necessarily particularly 100% done, because they don't want to show us everything, like, oh, there's not that much competition. But of course, and either that means for us that you don't know your market, which is bad for you, or you don't want to show us your market, which is also bad for you. So just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
If I can quickly add to that from the coach side. So where does most of the time of the coaching go? After tier 1, the innovation is typically, yes, it's good. You normally focus on crystallizing that. But just as Larissa said, and I think Katja agrees, it is the business side. And definitely the competition, I go through that with practically every company that I coach, and say, look, you have to really show that you understand your competition, not just your closest direct on the technology, but everybody who fulfills the need. Also, the financial projections are like the whole business. I studied maths, but I also said math. Companies sometimes are saying, oh, we want to show great projections because that's what the EIC wants to see. Well, I always say, look, you have to do the math to see, is it realistic? And that's why you really need to think, okay, what are your channels to get to the market? Who are your partners? So that if you show hockey stick, make sure that you have the math supports it, your business model supports it, because otherwise, it's not credible.
Katja, you wanted to say something?
I just want to second that, like regarding competition. I think that goes for the whole proposal. It's better to be honest and to really lay out your challenges and show that you know your challenges and that you have an idea of how to overcome them, than to kind of brush it over and hope that the evaluator or maybe the jury, I don't know, kind of doesn't see it, doesn't realize it. Maybe one out of the 4 doesn't see it, or 2. But there are 4. And chances are you hit somebody who is basically in your field of business, So they, like what I can say, in about half of the cases I get, I know the competitive landscape just because I know it from my work, right? So I don't even have to Google anything. I know the big players, right? I know what they are doing about, and yeah. Otherwise, if I don't know it, because it's a bit outside, I just Google. I just read a bit. Like, it doesn't take long to find out who are the big players. Now, is what they are doing really a direct competitor or not? Well, this they can argue. They can put in their business plan. They can discuss this. They can say, it's not really a direct competitor because ABC. Okay, then you can argue with that. But leaving it out, if I find it, putting kind of a description of the innovation into Google, what is it called? It's into Google search, and there are like 4 big companies doing similar stuff, and then in the business plan, I don't find any description of that. Like, tell me why it's not relevant. Okay, it might not be relevant, but tell me why. So this is like a big, as the 2 colleagues said, this is a big thing to try to brush over things. Same goes for, if I can say that, for me, for the what is it in English? TRL, like the technology readiness level. Like, there's a certain 5 to 9. you have to be at a certain stage, you know, and many companies are at that stage, and I like to see some pictures of some models of some whatever they did, but don't just make it up, you know, like rather wait a year instead of just trying to present yourself to something what you're not, you know, like people tend to get, it's a waste of time and effort if the company is not yet there and tries to apply. I think it's better to wait till you're really there and then push forward to it. No, that's so the TRL for me is also a big what I'm looking into. How did they get to that? What did they do? What did they test? What's the history of the development, and then going forward?
Thank you, Katja. So now we have more than 60 people online, and after people will also watch our webinar recorded, and most of them, they have question how to win, yeah, how to get funding. So I would like you to remember the best company like which you see, and like, oh my God, this is definitely go. Like I just ask few questions to clarify, and Kaya will think, I just nailed something a bit, and it's definitely will be unicorn or something like that. So what it was like, team, product, market fit. I know that probably you'll say all together, but just give us some hints from your experience, what you've seen.
If I start as a coach, because I see the companies maybe like immediately after tier 1. So there's definitely this wow effect. First of all, you read it and you say wow, based on your own experience. And where does the wow come from? It comes from seeing that these people know what they are talking about, but they are not arrogant. Exactly. They are not trying to brush things over. They know the market, they understand the challenges they have. And I think this is really, as Katja said, it's really important you don't go there and say, hey, we are the best, and you know what, we are the only solution, because it's not true. If you show, look, we have a great innovation, and there are these challenges, and especially like maybe there are really big players in the market, and they just have the capability and resources you don't have, but you tell them. And then you show what your advantages are. And to me, it's really like doing a good competitive analysis and really showing you understand it. And then showing what your idea of going to market is. And then, like I said, seeing that you have a model that can scale, and you understand what are your first steps, what do you after that, what do you then. And then it's the team. It really is the team. And this is the one thing I would want to remind to you all applicants. First of all, you don't have all the people you need for the growth, but you need to show that you understand what kind of people you need to bring into the team. Because look, when you submit the application, you may have like 5 people in the team. You may not even have the company yet, because you don't have to have a company established anymore to submit. But you have to have an understanding that over the 2 years of the project, what type of people are you going to hire? What are your skill gaps? And when you have realistic evaluation of that, that also helps. Of course, it's great. If you, quite honestly, one company I coached who got funded, or their team had 2 people who had already done 2 previous exits of 300 million. So it's sort of a pretty easy to think, okay, these guys really know what they have been there, done that. But it doesn't mean that that's the only way to win. Of course not. I have also coached companies who have gotten funded who had 0 business experience in the team, but who understood they needed to get it into the team, and who had a clear understanding of what their skill gaps were. And they also had started to work on how to get such people there. They already had advisors, for example, which is a good way to start. And they had a very realistic understanding of the competition and the challenges. And they did get funded, and it was brilliant to see. And as I said, their team was entirely technology team at the times of submission.
Katja, you might want to to say from your justice as well?
Yeah, I would also say all of it is important. Many companies, like many applications lack on the business side because it tends to, they did all their work into developing some really sometimes great innovation, but then, you know, you really see it in the proposal. Then, you know, like, oh, it gets very short, very general comments, and you're like, okay, maybe, yeah. So for me, like really, the question is, would I invest? So it has to be a coherent whole story that captures the interest, where I feel, hey, if they manage, I want to be like, I want to be proud that I evaluated. I didn't do a lot, but you know, hey, they did it. You know, like I know they would manage. It has to capture my interest, and often it's like I see that the company kind of can translate sometimes really technical stuff into a really cool narrative where you want to read the 150 pages. Yeah, so that's a big plus for me. It should be concise, it should be interesting, and it has to be ambitious, but it has to be realistic. I look for the main thing, as everybody said, is scale up. It's not only a cool invention, can it scale? So it has to be realistic and ambitious. The financial table, for example, has to match. It's one thing if you tell all these big stories and then you come to the financial table, it doesn't translate it into it. You know, it has to fit, for example. The IP is important. If this is a thing that is possible to protect, you know, you don't have to have everything like cleared out yet, but you have to have a FDO, like a real FDO, not just like, yeah, we made a research and it's fine, nobody will challenge us, but, you know, really look into the matter, maybe get a patent lawyer to look into it and have a strategy how you want to protect your idea. As I said, like the financial table, the strategic partners I find really important in most, like you can't do it alone. You know, like most of the inventions you can't really like scale alone. So if you have good and big partners, that's a big thing. Yeah, and in general, really that the whole thing is coherent and tells a story, and that the team shows that, as Kaya said, they know who they are, they know what they have, and they know what to do to get where they want to be. Like this has to be really clear.
Great, thank you, Katja. Larissa, does this work on jury as well? I mean, there are frequently very good proposals but some of them a bit fail to impress and when pitching their case. Do you have something to say about this as well?
Yeah, why only half of team after step 2 when they can win face-to-face interview?
Mm-hmm.
How do
I mean, listen, I think one of the questions that I've seen here as well is hiring a consultant. You see it immediately. I mean, there is a difference between the people presenting and then what they've wrote. Then we know, okay, this is a consultant that wrote it to them, and the consultant isn't there to pitch right now. So I think that's definitely one. But that's why I think the face-to-face is there, you know, to. First of all, as a remote evaluator, unfortunately, you cannot ask all the questions that you have. You just have to take it as face value and be like, okay, I have all these questions, but like, you know, and that's when the face-to-face comes into play, and then say, okay, now we get to ask all the questions where we feel there's something missing in the proposal. Now for the perfect proposal, there's always going to be a couple of questions, but it's the answers that matter. If you have excellent answers to that, I mean, you've gone through all these steps already to get to this point. This is like already there. You can give yourself a pat on the back because it's really hard. I mean, this is really, really hard. And you get to that last point, you know, and then we're basically just checking, is the narrative the same? Do you have answers to some of the questions we would have loved to ask in the beginning, but no, you couldn't because of the remote evaluation, that isn't possible. And then we basically take that on board, and we just want to make sure that it's cohesive. I think that's what I think my colleagues also wanted to say. Like, if you're saying you have an amazing sales plan, but you have a no sales director with any sort of experience, that's not going to be cohesive. There has to be cohesion between what you say and what you have and what you want to do. And that's what we're looking for, like these little gaps of things like, okay, you say A, but everything that you do is B. So this cannot work out. And then we start picking up on that. And all the jury members that I've been working with, most of them have been doing this for many years. And when you've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of business plans, these things, you just pick them up really quickly. You go through this and you're like, ooh, there's something here, you know, or ooh, there's something there. And especially if you have 5 people and, you know, they know most of them either know the market or they've been working on this or they have invested a lot of money into this. There's nothing really you can hide. You know, you're kind of coming into this interview, and I want to say you're basically coming in naked, because if there's something that you want to hide, we're going to figure it out. There's nothing you can hide, you know. But if you actually make it and you go through all of these hoops, I mean, you've done an amazing job, honestly.
And if I can add quickly one more thing. So as I said from the beginning, remember, you are doing an application for EIC funding, but especially when you do it for blended funding, remember, you will have to get in also private money. And exactly as Stephanie said, please remember, start working on getting the private money and discussing with them already from stage 1, because you can't leave it till too late. This is no longer like, hey, let's get EU funding, and then when that runs out, let's get more EU funding. Blended funding doesn't work like that. You have to get private investment, because the EIC investment is maximum 50% of your total investment need. They are matching investors, so you have to get private investors in. Also, as Larissa said, and I very much agree with you, also from the side that, you know, as private investor, as an angel investor, as in a board of VC, that's exactly what we do. You know, we look at the cohesion. It's not that, in our pitch deck, we explain absolutely everything. You can't do it because then the pitch deck gets 200 slides and you don't want to do it. But you focus on the key things, but then you need to be able to answer the questions. And that's why, okay, the question, I also saw the question of, okay, should you use a consultant or not? I'm not saying yes or no. And I coach companies who use a consultant to do the writing. But one thing is, which I think, I, as an investor, I do want to see that the team knows what they are doing, and they can't outsource everything. So a consultant may help you in doing the work, that you can't expect to outsource it, because then I would say that no private investor will be interested in you, because they really want the team to know what they are doing, and not with all the answers, but with the ability to say, well, this is how we will find answers to the questions we still don't have answers for, and this is how we will grow.
I just want to add the investment. There is, even for step 2 at least, a criteria that you have as an evaluator to answer with go if the company kind of the financing needs are kind of clear. So there's a small, what's it called, a small field where the applicant fill in, and it seems small, but it's really crucial. Like if the company asks for so and so much money from the EIC, and then the funding needs are much higher, and then he writes into this, this will be done with private funds, like my private funds. I'm like, whoa, then congratulations. And I think you don't need the EIC if you have, like, I don't know how many millions in the pocketbook, you know what I mean? So this is maybe a small kind of field, which people might think of, it's not important, but this is a crucial field. You really have to say, hey, we did our research, we pitched this already to some investors. Maybe they even wrote us a letter, which I can add, you know, like, hey, we're interested. This is a bit too risky or too, but if the EIC chooses to invest, we might be interested in doing this and that. Not just like blah, 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 like one sentence, but really like a bit more material. Are they really into it? Did they really look into the proposal? That's very helpful. If you see that because one of the things of the EIC is they don't want to push out private capital. They don't want to replace it. They want to draw it in. They want to see that, hey, they give money, and then the private capital, the VCs, the angels are coming in because they want to co-invest. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Thank you, Kaya, for raising up this question about private investment. Yeah, and what we also said to our startups that you should prepare to this journey. It's the same journey as for EIC or for venture funds or business angels. Yes, the minor difference is AI platform, which is you have to understand how it works, and it's like a bit time consuming, but all three success factors, team, product, market fit, the same pitching deck, the same video. So all the process, just use it and knock to all doors for funding. Larissa, please.
You just said a very important word, which is AI, for example. I think one of the things that we've also seen, if people use AI and blockchain in their documentation, and they cannot back up why this is an added value, it's a no-go. If they put in AI and blockchain and they have no specialist, then it's a no-go. So don't use buzzwords if you don't know what to do with them, because it's going to make it so much more complicated. It's better to have a good business model that makes sense without the buzz than trying to put in all the buzzwords. It's not going to work out.
Can I just add to that? I have been an evaluator for the Pillar 2 trustworthy AI projects that honestly, as a coach, I have said to some companies who are like, and then we will use ML and AI. And I say, because I invest in AI companies and so on. And I say exactly as, thank you, Larissa, for pointing it out, because I say, yeah, don't use it as a buzzword. If it brings value, then use it, but don't just add it there, because you lose your credibility. It sounds wonderful to say, hey, machine learning, but you don't want to take that risk that you just add it, for fun. Can I quickly say, I noticed that there is a question. I'm not reading the questions all the time, but I noticed that somebody asked, do we need to show traction to have more chance to be selected? Now, I think it's really important, again, to remember that, especially in Tier 2, it's not only about explaining we have a great innovation and this is what the innovation does. You have to show willingness to pay. You may not have paying customers yet, but you have to, as a coach, and again, not just for EIC, but for investors, you have to show that, yeah, there are companies who are interested in this, who are willing to pay. If you don't have paying customers yet, it's not like, okay, it's a no-go, but you have to be able to show that there will be customers, there is a certain level of interest. And this is why I always say also that, okay, companies, when they apply for EIC and when they pitch for VCs and investors, they tend to talk very much about themselves, but they need to talk more about the customers and partners and what are the real benefits to the customers and partners and what is their interest, because this needs to be there. Actual sales, not necessarily yet, but you have to show that kind of attraction. I think that's important, definitely for investors. And I can say that for private investors at this day and age, we are going through pretty tough times, as I can say, in fundraising. So you need to be able to show that there is interest. You may think that your innovation is great, and it may be, but if you can't show that customers and partners think also that they are willing to pay for that, it's going to be very hard to convince investors.
Thank you, Kaya. So it's interesting that we naturally come to another question which I would like to ask. So I want to go to another extreme. So we were talking about wow, the best profile, and I would like to ask you to imagine the worst case. Like sometimes you see, no way, why you are doing this? You should not do this at all. Like, don't mention. We already, Larissa, raised up about AI, saying what you are not meaning, what nothing stands behind it. So please imagine these situations, and maybe 3 don'ts, like never just even don't try. Kaya, could you please start?
Well, as a coach, so first for me is always like, if the company is saying, hey, can you as a coach help us to write an application that we get EU funding? And then I say, okay, what are your funding needs? Like, let's talk about your business. And if there's like, oh, we just want to get the EU funding now, then I would say, okay, don't, because it is really crucial to understand that this is about growing a business, and the EU money is one option for your funding, but you have to think about your business. Second is that, yeah, it's all about the tech. It's about the innovation. And, for example, like, hey, we have a great innovation, which, will practically replace Google, and we have a 10-person team and we are going to do direct sales. And I'm like, okay, be realistic. If you are, it's great to have ambition, and you may say that, okay, we have something to kill Google, but I can say that it's going to be damn hard, and you typically would need a lot of money to do that. So it's not credible. And then it's really sort of this understanding the customer and partner benefits. And, it's very much about, our solution is this much faster, and it does this thing, better than, or like faster, or saves time or so, that it really doesn't tell like what's the benefit for the customer. And I go back to this willingness to pay. Like, why would a company pay for this? And it's like focusing only on the technology parts, but not taking into account like the, if you are selling to big companies, they want to see that they can trust on you, that you have the organization to be there, that it's easy to buy from you, your business model is such that, it fits them, or whether it's for consumers. So companies which just focus on their innovation and technology, then I always say, look, you have to take in the whole commercial side, and you have to appreciate that that's a skill too, and then get in the people really who understand that and can do it. But to me, the first one really is that if it's like, okay, we just want the EU money and we don't want to think about the other funding, that's to me the first where I say, look, it's not worth it then, because you have to think of the total funding. But too much focus on the technology only, and not thinking of the commercial side, and how to get to the market, how to grow. Sort of showing, as I said, showing numbers, projections, which the math doesn't work. And if they can't even answer to me as a coach to, well, how are you actually going to get to those sales numbers? One tiny thing. So when you do your presentation, pitch deck especially, I know that Excel is really great, and it can tell you when you do the calculations that, 6 years from now, your revenues are going to be 78,250,042 euros. Maybe it's just me, but I always say that if I see that kind of numbers in a pitch deck, I say, okay, you can deal with Excel money, but you have no idea what real world is like, because you can't predict with that accuracy. And it may be a tiny thing, but it actually tells a lot about how you forecast. And so use round numbers, show trends to the future, and not the exact numbers.
Thank you. Katja, how about?
Yeah, so I think I've hinted to it already before. So a couple of points, like for no-goes, like I think one is a complete mismatch of the application to whatever I find online about the company. That happens quite sometimes, like completely, so it doesn't match. Whatever I find doesn't match. Also, financing table doesn't match. Then the investment plan, what we talked about before, as Kaya said, there's no, I don't understand how this should ever work exactly. Like the sales go through the roof in the 3rd year, break even in the 4th year with I don't know, all of a sudden 100 employees from 3 part-time founders now, wait a second. First of all, You are 3 part-time founders now. You still have other jobs. You are somewhere located on the countryside of whichever member state it is, doesn't really matter. You want to have, in 2 years, you want to have like, I don't know, 60 employees. Where do you get them from? Okay, there's a lot of remote work, but you might also need, especially in my field, you need people on the ground, you need people with you. Where do you get them? You know, it's not like I deal with solar development. People are not like, you know, I don't know in all member states, but in many, the people who are really expert in this are very wanted. So why would they want to move to you somewhere in the middle of nowhere? I'm not saying it's not possible, but talk about it. Talk how you want to attract the talents you need, you know? How do you want to manage them? If you don't even have an office now, but you show me that in 1.5 years you have 50 people, where's your office? How do you want to establish the management processes? You have to form a team out of these 50 people and really work. Like, you know, people need to get onboarded and all this. Just show awareness and how you want to deal with this. Another thing is what I said, strategic partners is really crucial. Add LOIs what you can. And don't always, you can also, in order to add more, you can add it, not every LOI in one upload, but just put more LOIs in one file and upload it. Then you can get more in. So you need partners to show willingness to pay, to cooperate, to commercialize, also to demonstrate. Often in my field, at least, you need a big player to demonstrate your technology. You can't do it in your backyard. You need a big partner. It depends probably on the innovation, but in my field, energy, you usually need some bigger player. So human resources I talked about. No reaching out for customers at all, basically sitting in the back in the garage and doing the innovation, but not reaching out and seeing if people want it and why. TRL, I said, only an idea is not enough. You know, you really have to do something like some kind of model, some kind of TRL5, but really TRL5, in my field, TRL6 is better. TRL5 is also okay, but there you should really be. When it comes to the, that's my last point now, to the working packages, don't forget the commercial working packages. You know, there's like the innovation work packages up to TRL8, and then there's TRL9. Don't forget it. Even if you don't ask for funding, you need to present your plan how to commercialize. Of course, if you say grant first, then there are different ways, but if you want to have only grant first, you don't have to go into all the details, but still you have to show that you have some kind of an idea how to commercialize, and even more for blended finance. The commercial working packages are just as important than the innovation ones, where you still do some kind of research and development and whatever. So the working packages, I want to say, at least I look quite closely at them, the responsibilities, the times, what you want to do, how they fit together, also the costs, the budget attached to it. So don't forget about them. I think there's also quite some work to look into them, and some time needed. Like, you need to commit time and resources to develop the work packages.
Great. Laisa, what are the main don'ts on your side?
I think, as you can see from my colleagues here, there's a bunch of them. But, you know, one of the things that stands out is if the founders are completely diluted already, that's usually a bit of an issue. If the key employees don't have any stake in the company, that's usually an issue. I think that overall, so that if in the financials you have, like, I think one of you or both of you already said it, you have 2 years where there's an amazing hockey stick and then it peters out. Why? You know, like, why do we have 100% growth and then afterwards, like in 2 years, there's only 25% growth? Why? I mean, and that's also like, what is scaling, you know? So it's a fine line between underselling and overselling. I think that is really it. Just put in what you think is possible, because if you don't, we will ask you and you will not have a good answer. Like if you need to think about every little thing that you give in those applications, you need to think about, how do I back this up? Okay. And I think if you have a good answer, not for yourself, but maybe for some external people, you know, then you have a good chance of getting through. So the dues, I think overselling yourself is bad. And making sure that the structure that you have makes sense, you know, that you have the key employees are going to stay, that you have a plan on how they are going to stay, and that even if you don't have everybody on board, how are you going to acquire the key employees? Because in the end, it's human resources which are going to make all the difference, whether you're going to make it or not.
Great. I think that we have come almost to the end. Since we have a couple of questions, and if I could provide one further minute to each one of you, but 1 minute to each one. If you came across someone that was thinking about, like our audience, going to the EIC program, and he would come to you and you'd say, you should go to the EIC Accelerator because, what would you say?
Okay, if I start, you should go to, actually, I just yesterday talked with one potential company for coaching, and I said, okay, great. So you have identified a huge need in the market for which you have an innovation which really brings advantages, but also you've already shown that you have a team that has experience. The team has experience, but they understood also like what they need to grow in the team. They had gone through the very first growth stage. So from the 4 founders, they already had 12 people. So they had an understanding that, exactly as Katja said, and thank you for pointing it out. I think that companies forget that it is about execution, and execution means management. And, to grow a company from 5 people to 50 is not just, doesn't happen by snap of fingers. I've done that myself and several times, and it is hard, and people come and people go, and you really have to have really good HR, as Larissa said also. But it's really, and then I would really say okay, so, are you in this for real? Do you want to go and talk to investors also and really see, okay, what is our vision? Where do we want to go? Why are we doing this? If it is just as I said, if it's, well, let's get some money from the EU and then think about it more, then no. But if there is this, we want to make this into a company because our impact is this. And I do look at the impact, but not just the technology impact, but the impact on all the way to increasing European sovereignty. Because I do think that has been stated, and I think it's really important for us to look at areas where Europe needs to increase its technology sovereignty. And there are several strategic areas in that area. Also, if it's something that really, will matter for the future of the environment and climate and so on, create jobs and skills in Europe, it is important. So then I would say, okay, you have something great, you are early, so it will be very hard for you to immediately raise private funding. Go to the EIC, because that money may help you to cross the chasm so that you get enough traction that the private money will be investing in you. And that is ultimately the goal, I think. And I, as a coach, would love to see more and more of companies like this, because let's face it, that is where we in Europe have been lagging to the US. I lived 8 years in the US myself. And yeah, they are better at getting private money into crossing the chasm. Actually, they also get a lot of public money, but it's structured differently. It's structured through defense contracts and so on. there is a lot of money that goes on at the stage when Europe has struggled. So this is why I would say go to the EIC.
Thank you, Kaya. Your final pitch went a little bit over 1 minute, but we are still accepting it. Katja, can you do it in 1 minute, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think in order to avoid time and money and effort and like avoid frustration, I think first you have to ask yourself, do you have really a breakthrough innovation that in some way will change, impact the market? What Kaya said, I found interesting with the strategic and impact for Europe. I didn't have to think about this as I evaluate renewable energy, so I basically get only such proposals, but I think actually it's a good point. So do you have really good innovation, and do you at the right time? Do you have kind of the resources, the time and resources, and are you willing to commit to really work on preparing your application? Like, it's a lot of work. Do you have the time, or do you have all kinds of other stuff going on? Then just wait a bit, do it the next round. Do you have the time to really apply and invest the needed resources and time? What I think is also important, if you go through these works of filling this out, thinking about your backup answers, maybe work with a coach and so on, you also have to think that what if you don't get the EIC money? Well, you might also come out with something. You have a really good business plan. Maybe you want to change the format a bit for others, right? But you have all the answers. You can basically, rearrange the what is it called, the text blocks, make it maybe a bit nicer with some pictures, and go to the next investor, to the next angel, or to the next VC. I think that's that's also a plus what you can get out of it. So of course the money is the main drawer, but you get also, you are really worked through this process, and then you really come out with a plan if you do it right. And if you're lucky, you get, not lucky, but if you're kind of also, if it's in the stars, you also get the money.
Great, thank you. Larissa, final word to you.
I mean, if you want to get really a boost from a money perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a network perspective, the EIC is the right tool for you. But you have to be ready, and I think my colleagues said about this, but you have to be ready to get all that money and make it work. So if you think you're ready, if you have a good business plan, if it's the only thing that is missing for you to be fantastically successful is some money, maybe a bit of coaching, the EIC is right. If that is not the case, don't waste your time.
Oh, so very clean and sharp, this final word from Larissa. I think we can now go to the Q&A, at least for the most voted. So let me start with this one. Ina, can you read it?
Can you start the application process if the company is not yet registered? Kaya already was answering to this question. Maybe Francisco also can add.
You can do it in case you're intending to establish your company in a member state or associated country, and you can start the application without it, but you should be established before you sign the EIC contract. Okay. So let me see the other one most voted. The presentation will be uploaded. That's for sure. Also the recording of the session. This one here. I think Kai already replied to this one.
Yeah, we were approached by a consultancy firm to apply for EIC. What is your perspective on hiring consultants to apply for EIC? I would add also something like we know roughly statistics that companies who win and use services of consultancy companies can be up to 50%. So it's rough numbers, you can't calculate precisely, but like half companies manage to do it without consultancy, half like got this help, but as is already was told, like when you met in face-to-face interview with Larissa, you should show what exactly you are doing, but without consultancy.
Yeah, I would also say that there are advantages, specifically if you don't have the resources or the team to allocate to especially step 2. I think we still, with the support of national contact points like ourselves, step 1 we can manage. If you don't have the team resources to allocate to step 2, a consultant might be welcome, but you should always be in control and be able to speak for your application, I would say. So I don't know if you have anything to add, any of you, but I think that Kai already addressed the topic quite well. Okay, now this one?
English?
Yeah. It's asked about the English, if the English is evaluated specifically in the excellence section.
Yeah, Katya, please.
So it's not evaluated as a criteria, but I need to be able to understand it. Like, and I would go further, like it has to be a narrative which I like to read. Now, if there are sometimes like mistakes, like errors in grammar or syntax, I don't mind. I'm not a native speaker myself. But, you know, if they repeat, if I don't really get what's said, that's too little. Yeah.
If I can add to that, the application, the AI portal, you write a lot of text into that. But I personally feel that in your pitch deck, and you are submitting a new pitch deck also for tier 2, which can be longer than the 10 slides. Personally, I think that the pitch deck, which is something that you would show to the investors also, please make sure that at least it doesn't have typos. Because to me, it gives a sloppy feeling of the company. If you do 15 slides and you haven't checked the typos in that, it's already like, okay, right. Can I trust that if you're doing your delivery of your solution then really well? And it doesn't take much to have someone, it doesn't have to be a native speaker, but at least show it to a couple of people so that it's easy to read. I also agree, it's not like, okay, it has to be fantastic and it has to be read through native speakers and so on, but it has to be understandable. So again, short sentences instead of very, very long sentences, and really sort of focus to the point. That's what matters.
Thank you. So we have this question from Rice. So please.
Yeah, for the 1 to 5% of applicants that get grant funding, how many companies are we talking about per year? What types of company startups are they? What problems are they solving? So if I'm not correct, it's hundreds, up to 300 per year. Like, I'm being wrong?
I mean, we were over the numbers lately. Yeah. We are talking about the basis of quite a big universe. So if we are talking about 1 to 5%, it can vary significantly. I think that in the last number, it was over at least over 200 companies, I think.
Yeah.
And the topics and the focus area, they vary very much. They can be on health tech, fintech, I don't know.
And we have like cut-off dates, and we've got results like 3 times per year. So last 3 cutoffs is where like winners number is like from 60 to 90 companies per each of the cutoffs.
Yeah.
But maybe Larissa, you can add something because you know more about finalists, about their profiles and what kind of problems they are solving.
At least the ones that brought through you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's very, very diverse. You have everything from GovTech to FinTech to research to new drugs to anything. I mean, this is really open, of course, and it depends on the calls that you have. You know, it could be sustainability. We've given money to people for inclusion and diversity. I mean, you name it, we've got it. I don't think it's a matter of asking like what kind of market you're serving, but how well are you serving it? Is it underserved? So these are usually the ones that win, which have the good team. So and the statistics are available online. You can see the people that won. So you can have a look at it yourself, including all, you know, how many won and from. So the EIC is transparent around it.
Yeah, and actually I can add that the list of winners are open. If someone did not manage to find it online, you can approach us and we can share it with you. We have this list.
We have time for a couple more questions. This would be one of them.
Regarding the question whether the company has to be registered, do you have to sign the EIC contract in the beginning or only when you made it through all the steps? Francisco, you know the process?
Yeah. I mean, for signing the EIC contract is when you're retained for funding. So after the step 2 evaluation, if you have the equity part, you have to sign the investment agreement that is after the diligence process, if I'm correct. So that's how it works. Okay, let's go for a final question. And this, I think this one is curious enough. It's not this. It's a good way to end our panel.
Yeah, and honestly, we've got this question also often. So, what's the definition of game changing? Who's gonna start first?
Well, if I start as an angel investor, also when I look at a pitch, it is really this that okay, wow. They have looked at the customer need and also partner need, and they've come up with something like, okay, here is a real advantage to the customer that we can bring, which nobody else at the moment can bring on the same level. And when I say the advantage, as I said, it really covers not only the technology solution, but the fact, how do they deliver it to the customer, the channel, the ease of use, the ease of deployment, which is, by the way, something that also is very often missing about, we have this great technology, and then there's no discussion of how will the technology be deployed by the customer. For example, if it requires that the customer changes its entire process, it's going to be really hard for the customer to buy it, no matter how good the innovation is. But game changing is really, I think also, think about the entire ecosystem, not just your customers, but are you making a change in the ecosystem so that you're participating or creating a new cluster that then has even bigger impact. But always think from the customer.
Katja, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I didn't hear everything now. The sound was not good, but from my perspective, it's really, does it have an impact on the market? Does it change something in the market, and how? Does it change something for the customers and the users? Because customers and users are not necessarily the same. Of course, you have to sell it to the customers, but the change might be at the users. How about the competitors? I really think it's about the market. Like, what does it do to the market? Will it be really, it does not have to overthrow it, but will it substantially impact the market? Will there be something new in the field, and maybe even beyond the inner field of the innovation?
Larissa, you want to close?
Game changing.
Game changing. Yeah, I mean, I concur with everything that was said before, and I think the most important thing is that you have a considerable impact. I think that is where you have a proven considerable impact. Just example would be you come up with something where people wouldn't have to eat food anymore. I'm making it up, you know. But anyways, where the habits of an industry, of a market would be completely changed, that is game changing, you know. So hopefully that will help.
Thank you very much. It was great to have you. I will just have a final word just to close, and I will focus on next steps. So next steps, we were planning to organize a follow-up meeting, providing more details about the application process and also with winners of the EIC Accelerator. To this meeting, we will also use the unanswered questions that we had in order to build the presentation and make sure you provide all the details needed. I will also take some more minutes to try to reply to this question on the chat box, on the question box of our presentation. The record and the presentation that we used here will be shared with you all as well through our channels. And if you want if you think that the EIC is for you and you want to meet us for detail this to understand how this could happen, we have a contact template that will be on the presentation, of course, that you can use as an example, because this is just a suggestion, but it will help us understand really if you are a good suit for the EIC Accelerator and to further develop some things that we would like to do in advance. So all in all, that's it. We managed to keep still a high number of people until the end of our session. I thank all the members of the panel for their participation, Stephanie included. She is not here right now, but Ina, you wanted to also say something.
I just want to add interesting observation about the gender balance today. We have Stephanie and Natalie who is helping to organize everything. So Francisco now is a minor. And you know, it's like for EIC Accelerator, they also paying attention for a gender balance. Like they would like to have 50-50. Today we a bit over exaggerated it, but so we will be happy to see lots of companies both with gender balance, and so we will have fruitful ideas and implementation.
So once again, thank you very much, and we hope to see you again after the summer break for a follow-up event, but potentially on site. Let's see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.